We're gonna get started in just a little bit. Joy, you have a question. Make sure I update this page. Let's show. I have like 15 minutes till we're on. Just getting all the links. Okay. I just updated the web. The web's live. Just gonna mute myself. Hey, Ed and Pat. How you guys doing? I don't have a video for you today, so we're gonna be doing some screen sharing though. I got some interesting to talk about. But I do see your chat in Facebook. I also have the chat um, in YouTube and no chat on the web. We're gonna start on time. Let's see. It looks like you are right now. Okay. Actually, you know what I can do? I can. Don't act surprised. Okay, I'm gonna get started because I figure if I start right at 10, nobody will show up, and you're already here, so I'm gonna start. So welcome. We're gonna do a little bit of a live stream here from our build lab today. Um, our live stream is coming from my living room, so you're not gonna get a whole lot of video unless you want to see kids' toys everywhere. So you should all be able to see my screen okay. So we're going to talk today about the F3 flight controller, mini flight controller from Beta FPV. This has been a board I've been talking a lot about lately, and we just got a big batch of them in So as I learn about how they get put together and what kind of problems they have, um, how to get them to work with different sorts of radios like FR Sky or DSMX. Uh, lots of little things that can go wrong um, with these. So yeah, I've been reaching out to folks, asking lots of questions, reading lots of questions. There's a couple really great Facebook groups that you see a lot of the problems coming in on. Um, I'd say probably the biggest, most active one is the tiny. Oh gosh, some of the names of these things. I'll find it here. Ti Tiny Whoop Pilots of the World, and it's a group I think started by the creators or administrators or owners of Tiny Whoop Co. or whatever you want to call it. Here's that page. So a lot of good information, a lot of good questions, but I just did notice right away that there's been a lot of complaining and a lot of talking about the Beta FPV board on this group. So reached out, got some people to tell me about their problems, talked a little bit over those, and I'm going to talk about what I seen and what I learned, and maybe take some questions from folks if they have them about this board, and also show you a little bit of my background and why maybe it was a little bit easier to diagnose some of these issues looking at it from more of a software perspective. So if you're not familiar with this board I'm talking about right here, this F3 breast flight controller, you can find them in these, the Beta 65, the Beta 65S. They go on Amazon for about $100, $95. They're selling like crazy, partly because the wholesale prices on these are so good, so low. So lots of people are buying them, and they fly pretty good. I like them. They got pretty good motors on them. It's definitely not the top of the line micro drone, but wholesale prices are good, and people are getting good profit on the prices, especially if you're buying them on Amazon. This is a really high price if you. But of course, if you're selling on Prime and you're not Amazon, uh, you got maybe 20% just in Amazon fees being added to this order. So just kind of remember that sort of thing when you're buying very popular products on Amazon, is that it costs money to sell your products on Amazon, so you're paying a higher price. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about what came in. So we had an appointment earlier today, and the topic. Let me just bring up the notes. A guy named Steve, nice guy. He was from Tennessee, which is kind of cool. I usually just support folks here in Maine, but I started to take clients, I'd say, from all over the United States. So I talked to a guy, Steve, from Tennessee, and he was an airplane pilot. So he has, I'd say, definitely a background in RC, um, and he just got a tiny whoop and wore this Beta 65. Most likely, he bought it on Amazon, like a lot of other folks, and he was having a problem. So in the way he described his problem was here. We don't need to look at that yet. We'll look at this. The way he described his problem, he's running the F3 DSMX flight controller with OSD. He's using a DSMX transmitter. I think it was a DX9 or DX8. The way he described his issue was full pitch forward, mostly full throttle. It kind of flips and goes crazy and then levels out when he takes the thumb off the sticks. It doesn't do it for roll left or right. So I asked him for his Betaflight configuration and maybe a couple photos of his build and everything, just to see if anything's weird there. So I got his Betaflight configuration and reached out to a couple other pilots that I know are running the F3 DSMX version of this, and I got all their configure information and got it up on this site called GitHub. That, if you don't know what this is, we're going to talk about it in depth, but I just want to talk about this specific issue just in case you were following the conversation, and then we'll get a little bit more into GitHub, but I'm going to get right to the point. So Steve was having this issue. Like I said, he on full pitch forward and mostly at full throttle, it kind of flips and just goes a little crazy, and then it eventually levels out when he takes the thumb off the sticks. And it only did it on pitch forward, which is a bit of an indicator, and it doesn't do it for roll left or right. So to me, when I hear something along these lines, the first two things I start thinking of is software. On a small, tiny drone like this, there's not, the likelihood that an ESC is going to burn out. So a lot of times it's just configuration, and that's what makes these smaller boards good for beginners, because you're not going to have the number of issues that you would have with a full-size squad. So everything's on here. You got your receiver on here, you have your ESCs, you have everything that's gonna run. So really the only thing that can go wrong, not the only thing, plenty of mechanical things going on, especially when you're looking at some of these crooked components on the board. So with a build quality of mediocre to, I'd say, medium to high quality, you're going to have problems with hardware, but those are going to be things where it either flies or it doesn't, and you really notice it. So for this, the first thing we did is want to look at the differences. So to do that, when I talk to folks, I get their Betaflight configuration, and I go ahead and then put it onto a GitHub repo, so we can look at each other, look at the differences. And I start off with a working DSMX configuration that I know a pilot that's running a new board, and it works great. He gives me that information. You can see on his configuration he's running Betaflight F3. Not the latest version, 3.2.0, but the right target. Have all his settings here. I can see his resource assignments, his mixes, everything. This is everything that goes in here, and most people kind of focus on the PID settings. They may look at rates. If you flash your board, you may have, you may want to save your auxiliary information, your aux channel information. So that's all stored in here. If you don't understand what you're looking at right here, I'll share a video link here in the chat that you can see. see that? Here's the link. Um, so here's the link of getting those Betaflight settings, um, and how to download them. So after I'm going to show you how to do this, but I'm going to get to the issue. So yeah, I get that file which has all these interesting settings in it, and then I get the file from the user that's having an issue. In this case, it was we'll call him Race Fan, and I get his configuration. And the next part about what I do here is I'm going to compare the differences. So when I updated this file after creating as a branch for him, I'm assuming you understand everything about I'm saying when I say branch and compare, but we're going to get into that towards the last part of the hour. I compare his configuration settings with a known good board of similar makeup, DSMX, same vendor, etc., etc. So this gives me the difference between those two software configurations on two different boards. One that somebody's flying and they're happy, it doesn't have any issues, and then one where it flies okay, but it's showing some characteristics that get a little bit out of whack. So the software engineer inside of me immediately goes to, well, there's something definitely different, so let's get down into the weeds and understand what's different. So that's what we're looking at here, a diff. And if you're a developer, you understand what you're looking at here. But if you're not, I'm going to kind of cruise over it, and then we're going to get into a lot more detail about GitHub and why you should be a GitHub user, even if you're not a coder. So what I see here is there was 427 differences. So right away I know something's different. A lot of things are different. There's 186 additions and 241 deletions. So these are things that are different about these two configurations. One from a friend of mine's board and another one from Steve's board. So here on the top, the way this is color coded is that the red is what Steve's configuration lacked. So essentially, if I was to merge these two files together, the red would be the red here where you see the plus would be what would go away, and the green where you see the plus would be what would be added. So you're looking through this file, first thing that we notice is the version differences, and not considerably older, so we wouldn't expect any very erratic behavior. I would actually suggest him not to update to 3.2 because this will actually create lots of new issues if you're not familiar how to configure Betaflight. So stick with the version that's on the board unless you have a compelling reason to update. But so there's automatically a lot of differences here. But just looking over the things that are different, there's a couple things that pop out over and above just all of the things. One was his min throttle and max throttle settings. I could see that this was different. Not a lot to make a big difference. I asked the user, Steve, why it was different, and he mentioned that he thought this would fix the issue only because it did seem to happen when he was at full throttle. So if he changed those settings, logically that would stop the issue. So it's not that big of a difference. I didn't find that to be a big of enough variance cause a problem, so I made the comment as such. Um, Everything else, fine, fine, fine. Nothing here. OSD settings. It's so cool that that's all different. That's fine. Um, Anti-gravity settings. Fine. That's not going to cause that. But then eventually, I came down to the all important PI and D settings, the PIDs, which, if you ask me, are overrated because I'm not a very good pilot. So I keep everything pretty much at the default. And also because, hey man, it's gonna it's gonna break if I try to change it. So, but I did notice here in this configuration, based on the default PIDs that are in Betaflight, which are 58 pitch, roll, yaw on P, and then on the I and the D are, very different here. Um, Default being 58. Steve's setting was 108. On the roll, it's 40. His was 100. And then on the yaw, it was 70, and his was 180. So the pitch value being almost double, and the same thing with the roll value being double, to me, seemed to be a definite indicator. Um, some additional things that are a little bit different is in our tuned setup, just slightly tuned. We did add a little bit of RC Expo. He didn't have any, so he has a full linear input, and yeah, that could cause weird things to happen. So my prognosis back to him was to go ahead and set the PIDs back to default settings, see how it flew, because frankly, I should say that this user was flying in angle or horizon mode. He wasn't flying in sort of full manual. So adjusting his PIDs this drastically, I think it's going to have negative a negative effect to how it's going to handle. So we did that. um, and so far, I haven't got a note saying it's completely busted, but I feel pretty good that that's going to fix this issue. Um, it's always good to try to emulate somebody who's working, and when we use GitHub and we use diff, we can really zero in on what's different, and that's why it was. Um, so a couple other things I can share here. In the process, we also wanted to compare a Beta 65 that came directly from the factory with the firmware that is on it, and how that was different. So I have a Beta 65 version here that was updated from the factory, and we can compare that against the DSMX version that we have out here. You're going to see this is very much like just a couple small differences. So automatically you can see a lot fewer changes up here. Only 65 changes. Same revision. As we can see, we're doing 3.2. Our map's a little different. Our mix is a little different. That's all fine. We adjusted some trims. That's fine. And we adjusted the mid-max throttle. We adjusted the battery cell voltage settings, as you can see here, for kind of a weird OSD battery thing where people claim that they're not getting as much flight time, um, basically on those settings. Yaw motors still being reversed, which I got a couple of questions about why we have to do that. And then OSD settings, but you can notice no PID diffs, so it is these are both running defaults. Some rate differences, and I asked for these updates to be made partly because the controller that comes with the beta FPV lacks a little bit of resolution. So it's helpful to increase those rates. Let's compare one more, just in case you're not flying the Beta FPV 65. We have a 75 here that we brand new, not flashed. Um, this is on an FR Sky, so we're comparing the FR Sky with the DSMX. So you wouldn't really notice the difference between the two of those in terms of the configuration. At least the settings we're looking at, you won't notice difference. And here's against the Beta 75. So again, pretty much all the same. In this case, the only thing that's different is that the version we have updated the RC Expo. So those were the differences. And you may be asking yourself, what is this site he's looking at? This GitHub thing. And that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, because you know one thing I think about a lot with software is how the differences between code and text, and how we look at things, and then how they're shown in a user interface. So what I'll say is, we're all very familiar with this interface. We know what this interface does. We know where we go and we poke and change things, and sometimes we change a lot of things and we don't remember, what we changed, and that could be a big pain. So, yeah, but it's handy. I mean, who wants to do everything totally manual? But the thing I want to show you today is just, how you can keep track of those changes, and, maybe save yourself a little bit of headache and also, quickly diagnose issues when somebody asks for help. You can ask a few questions and get a file, and you can usually offer some pretty good insight, based on your own observations. For some reason, I must have too many USB things plugged in. Okay, it's not going to work. Okay, just bear with me, folks, here. Having a technical issue. Sometimes it seems like the number of USB ports in my small little computer here gets overloaded and things don't work like they're supposed to. There we go. Okay. There we go. I really need to get a faster hard drive. Okay, so anyway, what I wanted to show here was, and now my video's messed up. So, is that better? No. I totally lost audio feedback. I'm gonna try this again. I'm sorry, Betaflight's just not starting up for me. Ha 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 ha. Hey Reed, how are you? I didn't know that was race flight. Drama. We are not having much success with our computer. It's like the gremlins jumped in. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I'm assuming y'all can still hear me. I'm not getting good audio on my side. Um, things. If I change the microphone, this. Oh, well, I didn't hear that. So where can I find it? Where can I find the source code? have to look for it. Yeah. Well, I guess that's the bad thing about GitHub, right? Is that people can do that. But that's also the good thing about GitHub. I've seen big corporations have their stuff dumped out on GitHub. So I'd say it happens to the best of us. Oh, well, let's look for it. Let's see if we can find it. We'll look for. Yeah, I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it too. Uh, I think my computer is just really bogging down now. So I'm trying to kill a few things and see if that helps speed it up a little bit. I'll have to look what that is. So yeah, I'm having more and more technical difficulties. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it short. Um, the second link there, Race Flight 1. Yeah, 23 hours ago. That's it right there. Huh. Well, it says it was changed 23 hours ago. Let's see what changed about it. Huh. Didn't even. Okay. Well, let's star this. You can pay the GNU license. So who's this guy? Oh, okay. Scholars. So this one was the one that they had originally, um, and then they closed it, huh? Yeah. Then they closed sourced it, and then he came along and created this one, Race Flight 1. And interesting. And then he dumped all the source code in here. Holy cow. Yeah, you can see all Preston's changes that he made 13 days ago. Haha, this is hilarious. Let's look at see who's the leading contributor, who's been writing all the code for Race Flight. Oh, wow. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the idea of somebody going rogue means that they didn't do a lot of the work. But if I'm reading the source code correctly, it seems like this person here, RS2K, did a lot of the coding. Um, who's that? Is that Preston's GitHub handle? Because it seems like his is this one. Preston RF. Hmm. It's always funny to see what they're changing there. Cool. Well, yeah. I still maintain open source software. Like Betaflight is always going to have more a commitment to it, but this is an impressive little run here. Uh, I'm not quite sure who all these players are. This person is obviously in the lead. Cool deal. Thanks for sharing. Hmm. Cool. All right, man. I'm gonna jump. Thanks for everybody for joining. Happy flying.